You sit down to eat. You have options: a fridge full of food, a phone full of delivery apps, and a grocery store 10 minutes away stocked with 40,000 different products. You have never once had to wonder whether the thing in front of you was safe to swallow, but for most of your species' existence, eating looked nothing like this for roughly 300,000 years. Your ancestors ate things that would make you gag, spit, and probably cry. And the strangest part is not what they ate. It is that their diet was almost certainly healthier than yours. Let's start with what might be the most universally uncomfortable one: insects. Not as a dare, not as a novelty snack at a tourist market, as a daily, reliable, genuinely important source of calories and protein. Your ancient ancestors ate beetles, grubs, termites, caterpillars, and larvae the way you eat eggs or toast. Casually, routinely, without thinking twice. Anthropologist Julie Lesnick at Wayne State University has spent years studying the role of insects in human evolution. Her research suggests that entomophagy, which just means the practice of eating bugs, was not some desperate fallback when the hunt failed. It was a deliberate, nutritionally strategic food source. Termites alone are roughly 36% protein by dry weight. Some species of caterpillar contain more iron than beef. Your ancestors were not suffering through this. They were thriving on it. Now consider bone marrow. You have probably seen a fancy restaurant serve roasted marrow on toast and charge $28 for it. Your ancestors were eating this over 1,000,000 years ago, and they were not roasting it gently with herbs. They were smashing open the leg bones of dead animals with rocks, sometimes bones that had been lying on the savannah for days after a predator kill, and scooping out the fatty marrow inside with their fingers. Archaeologists at Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, one of the most important early human sites on Earth, have found stone tools with clear impact marks used specifically for cracking bones open. The marrow inside was dense with fat and calories. In a world where energy was hard to come by, a cracked femur was a jackpot. It did not matter that a lion had eaten the meat 2 days ago. The marrow was still good, and your ancestors knew it. Then there is the one that surprises most people: raw meat. Not steak tartare with a quail egg on top, uncooked flesh torn from a fresh kill or scavenged from a carcass. Chewed slowly with powerful jaws. Before your ancestors controlled fire, and that transition happened gradually over hundreds of thousands of years, raw animal tissue was simply what meat was. Richard Wrangham, a biological anthropologist at Harvard, argues in his cooking hypothesis that the control of fire and the invention of cooking was one of the most transformative events in human evolution. Cooking pre-digests food. It breaks down tough fibers, kills parasites, and unlocks far more calories from the same piece of meat. But before that, raw was the only option: your ancestors' teeth. Jaws and digestive systems were built for it in ways yours no longer are. You lost the equipment because you no longer needed it. Fire did the work instead. Speaking of things you would not put in your mouth voluntarily, let's talk about bark and roots, and the fibrous, bitter, woody parts of plants that you would walk past without a second glance at a site called Border Cave in South Africa. Researchers found evidence that early modern humans were cooking and eating starchy root vegetables at least 170,000 years ago. These were not the soft, sweet potatoes you buy in plastic bags. These were tough, fibrous underground storage organs that required digging, washing, and extended roasting over coals just to become chewable. Amanda Henry, a researcher who has studied ancient dental calculus, which is the hardened plaque on fossil teeth, found starch granules trapped in Neanderthal teeth from sites across Europe and the Middle East. This means Neanderthals were eating cooked plant foods far more often than the old image of the pure meat-eating caveman ever suggested. They were grinding, roasting, and chewing some of the toughest plant material on the planet. Now imagine walking along a prehistoric coastline. The tide is low, and your ancestor squats on the wet rocks and starts pulling shellfish off the stone with bare hands at Pinnacle Point in South Africa. Archaeologist Curtis Marion and his team found evidence of systematic shellfish harvesting dating back roughly 164,000 years. Mussels, limpets, and other marine invertebrates were gathered, cracked open, and eaten raw or lightly roasted. This was not occasional, it was strategic. Coastal shellfish beds are predictable. They do not run away. They do not fight back. They are just sitting there, full of protein and omega-3 fatty acids, waiting to be picked up. Marion has argued that shellfish may have been a critical survival food during harsh climate periods when inland food sources dried up. The coast was a refuge, and the menu was whatever clung to the rocks. Here is one that tends to make people squirm. Stomach contents. When your ancestors killed a herbivore, they did not throw away the stomach. In many hunter-gatherer cultures documented by ethnographers, the partially digested plant matter inside a prey animal's stomach was considered valuable. It was warm, pre-processed, and full of nutrients that would otherwise be inaccessible. Some groups consumed it directly. Others used the stomach acids and enzymes to ferment other foods. This was not desperation. It was efficiency. When you kill an animal with your bare coordination and a sharpened stick after tracking it for 6 hours, you do not waste a single part. And then there is something quieter, but just as strange to modern sensibilities. Dirt, or more precisely, geophagy, the deliberate eating of clay or mineral-rich earth. This has been documented in human cultures on every inhabited continent and is observed in dozens of animal species. Pregnant women in traditional societies across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia have practiced geophagy for centuries. The leading theory is that certain clays bind to toxins in plant foods and neutralize them, acting as a kind of natural detoxification system. Others suggest it supplements mineral intake, particularly iron and calcium. Your ancestors were not confused. They were doing something your body might still crave under the right conditions. So what did a full day of eating actually look like? Picture this. You wake up in the early light. There is no breakfast waiting. You walk out from the rock shelter and start scanning the ground for tracks, digging sticks in hand. By mid-morning, you have pulled a handful of fibrous roots from the earth, cracked open a termite mound and licked the insects off a twig, and shared a few handfuls of tart wild berries with the children walking beside you. By afternoon, someone in the group has brought down a small antelope. You eat some of the organ meat immediately, the liver first, because it is the most nutrient-dense thing in the animal. You crack the long bones with a hammerstone and scoop out the marrow. The stomach contents go to the elders. By evening, someone is roasting the tougher cuts over a fire while you sit and chew on a strip of dried meat saved from days ago. There is no single meal, no plate, no table. Eating is something that happens all day in small bursts from dozens of sources, and almost none of it would appear on a modern menu. Here is the counterintuitive part. That chaotic, scavenged, insect-heavy, dirt-laced, bone-cracking diet was extraordinarily well-balanced. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups, like the Hadza of Tanzania, documented extensively by anthropologist Frank Marrow, show diets that are diverse, seasonal, nutrient-dense, and almost entirely free of the processed sugars and refined carbohydrates that drive modern metabolic disease. Your ancestors did not have a food pyramid. They did not count calories. They did not read labels. And yet, their bodies were leaner, their teeth were stronger, and their blood sugar was stable in ways that modern medicine now spends billions trying to restore. The shift came with agriculture. About 12,000 years ago, humans began farming, and the menu collapsed. Instead of hundreds of wild food sources, entire civilizations began depending on one or two staple grains: wheat, rice, corn. The variety vanished, the nutrient density dropped. Tooth decay skyrocketed because sticky, starchy grains cling to teeth in ways that wild foods never did. Average human height actually decreased after the adoption of farming. The archaeological record is clear on this. Your ancestors got shorter, sicker, and more malnourished after they invented the thing that was supposed to solve the food problem forever. So the next time you open your fridge and scan 40 options and still say there is nothing to eat, consider this. Your ancestors would have looked at that fridge the way you would look at buried treasure. But they also would have been confused by almost everything inside it. Plastic wrappers around food that has no season, ingredients with names no one can pronounce, sugar in things that are not even supposed to be sweet. They ate grubs, marrow, raw liver, clay, and the contents of a dead antelope's stomach, and somehow, against every modern instinct telling you that is disgusting, they were doing it better than you are. You sit down to eat, you have options, But the question your ancestors never had to ask is the one that haunts the modern world. With all of these choices, why does your body still feel like something is missing?